Listen, if you were sitting right next to me right now, I'd lean in and say this quietly because most men don't want to hear it out loud. The moment a woman distances herself and starts ignoring you is not the moment to panic, beg, explain, or fix things. And yet, that's exactly what most men do. They send longer texts, they ask more questions, they chase clarity, they chase reassurance, and without realizing it, they push her even farther away. Here's the controversial truth no one likes to say. When a woman pulls back, it's usually not because you didn't do enough. It's often because the dynamic shifted, and the way you're responding makes you look unsure of yourself. That doesn't mean you're a bad guy. It doesn't mean she's a bad person either. It means attraction runs on emotional tension, not emotional pressure. Now, before you get defensive, slow down. This isn't about blaming women, and it's definitely not about playing games. This is about understanding how human behavior works when interest changes. People move toward what feels calm, confident, and grounded. They move away from what feels anxious, heavy, or demanding, even when it's well-intentioned. Most men are never taught what distance actually means, so they guess. And when men guess, they usually assume the worst. I messed up. I'm losing her. I need to do something right now. That mindset alone is what ruins your position, because the strongest move in moments like this is rarely action. It's restraint. Here's another uncomfortable reality. Attention is not love, and silence is not rejection. Distance is information. Ignoring it or reacting emotionally to it is how men lose leverage and self-respect at the same time. What you do after she pulls back matters more than whatever caused it. This video isn't about tricks. It's about control, your control, emotional control, behavioral control, the kind that makes a man steady instead of reactive. Because when you understand what distancing really signals, you stop taking it personally. And when you stop taking it personally, you stop making weak moves. If you've ever stared at your phone wondering what to say next, if you've ever felt that knot in your stomach when replies slow down, this is for you. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn goes against instinct, but it's exactly what works. One, why chasing her when she pulls away is the worst move you can make. Let me start this the same way I'd tell a friend sitting right next to me. Lower your shoulders for a second, breathe, because the instinct you're feeling right now, the urge to reach out, explain, clarify, and save the connection, is the exact instinct that works against you. This is the controversial part. Chasing doesn't show care, it shows fear, and fear is not attractive. Most men are taught that effort equals value, so when a woman distances herself, the logical response seems obvious. Do more, text more, ask what's wrong, reassure her, show consistency, show intention. On paper, that sounds mature. In real-life dynamics, it backfires. Here's why. When she pulls away, something in the emotional balance has shifted. Attraction thrives on a sense of freedom and emotional steadiness. The moment you start chasing, you unintentionally communicate, I'm unsettled without your attention. That shifts the power dynamic immediately. Now she's not leaning in, she's feeling pressure, and pressure kills curiosity. Think about it this way. If someone starts chasing you for answers when you're unsure, do you feel more relaxed or more boxed in? Most people pull back even further. Not because they're cruel, but because they want space to feel their own emotions without being managed. Another uncomfortable truth. Chasing makes the situation about your anxiety instead of the connection. You're no longer responding from confidence. You're reacting from discomfort, and reactions are loud. They feel heavy. They feel needy, even when they're polite. This is where most men get it wrong. They believe silence means rejection, so they rush to fill the gap. But silence often just means she's processing. When you interrupt that process with constant messages or emotional check-ins, you don't look caring. You look unsure. Here's the part that really stings. The more you chase, the less space she has to miss you. Attraction doesn't grow when someone is always present. It grows in contrast, in absence, in moments where someone gets to feel what it's like when you're not immediately available. Chasing removes that contrast entirely. Now, this doesn't mean you should disappear out of spite. That's not strength, that's ego. The key difference is intentional restraint, not punishment. You're not pulling away to manipulate. You're pulling back because you respect yourself enough not to overextend when interest isn't being matched. Strong men don't chase clarity. They allow clarity to reveal itself. Here's a simple rule to remember. If she's creating distance, your job is not to close it. It's to stay grounded. Grounded men don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't beg for emotional reassurance. They trust that if interest is real, it doesn't need to be chased. And ironically, this is what often reattracts her. When you stop chasing, you communicate stability. You show that your life doesn't collapse when attention shifts, that you can handle uncertainty without losing control. That kind of emotional composure is rare, and it's felt immediately. So if she pulls away, don't sprint toward her. Stand where you are. Stay calm. Let the dynamic breathe. Because the moment you stop chasing is often the moment she starts noticing the space you left behind. 2, distance is a test of your emotional control, not your worth. Let me talk to you like you're sitting beside me again, because this part hits deep for most men. The moment a woman distances herself, the first thought that flashes through your mind is usually this: what did I do wrong? That thought alone is the trap. Because distance is rarely a verdict on your value. It's a mirror reflecting how emotionally steady you really are. Here's the controversial truth. Her pulling away is less about you and more about how you respond. Most men personalize distance immediately. They treat it like a scorecard of their worth. And once you tie your identity to her attention, emotional control disappears. You become reactive. You start analyzing every message, every delay, every tone shift. Suddenly, her behavior controls your mood. That's not connection, that's emotional dependence. Distance is not rejection by default. Sometimes it's curiosity fading slightly, sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's confusion, sometimes it's simply her needing space. But none of those explanations matter as much as one thing: how grounded you stay when uncertainty shows up. Here's where emotional control separates strong men from reactive men. Reactive men interpret distance as danger. They rush to fix it. They interrogate the situation. They spiral internally. Grounded men interpret distance as data. They observe. They pause. They stay calm. They let reality unfold instead of forcing it. That difference changes everything. Think of emotional control like gravity. When you're steady, people feel safe leaning toward you. When you're frantic, people feel the urge to escape the emotional turbulence. Distance doesn't test your charm. It tests your composure. And composure is attractive in ways words can't replicate. Let's flip the perspective for a second. Imagine she pulled away and instead of chasing, you stayed relaxed. You didn't confront her. You didn't demand explanations. You didn't withdraw in bitterness either. You simply continued your life, your rhythm, your energy. What message does that send? It says, I'm interested, but I'm not destabilized. That message is powerful. Most men believe emotional control means suppressing feelings. That's not it. Emotional control means acknowledging the discomfort without letting it dictate your actions. You can feel the tension and still choose restraint. You can feel uncertainty and still choose calm. That's maturity. Here's another uncomfortable insight. Distance exposes attachment styles. When someone pulls back, your reflex reveals whether you're centered or dependent. That moment isn't punishment. It's feedback. It shows you where your emotional anchors truly sit. And this isn't about pretending not to care. Caring is human, but caring without control turns into pressure. Controlled care turns into quiet confidence. The paradox is this: the less you try to manage her feelings, the more attractive your presence becomes. Because emotionally controlled men don't need to control outcomes. They trust themselves to handle whatever outcome arrives. So when she distances herself, don't ask, how do I pull her back? Ask instead, can I stay calm right now? That single shift changes your entire posture. Distance is not a verdict, it's a moment. A moment that invites you to rise above instinct, above insecurity, above reaction. When you pass that test, something subtle happens. You stop chasing validation, and you start embodying stability. And stability? That's the kind of presence people naturally move toward, without being chased. 3. Silence is power when you stop explaining yourself. Let's be honest for a moment. When a woman goes quiet, the noise in your head gets louder. You start replaying conversations. You wonder if your last message sounded wrong. You feel the urge to clarify your intentions, to explain what you meant, to make sure she understands you. That urge feels responsible, it feels mature, but most of the time it's driven by discomfort, not strength. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Over-explaining is rarely about clarity. It's about easing your own anxiety. Most men talk themselves out of attraction without realizing it, not because they say the wrong thing, but because they say too much. Silence feels risky when you're emotionally invested, so you fill the space with words. You explain your tone, you justify your actions. You preemptively defend yourself against something she hasn't even accused you of. And that's where the power leaks out. Silence isn't cold. Silence isn't punishment. Silence is restraint. It's choosing not to react just because you feel uneasy. When you stop explaining yourself, you communicate that you trust your own intentions enough not to oversell them. There's something deeply grounding about a man who doesn't rush to narrate his every move. If you've ever felt that internal pressure to fix the vibe the moment it shifts, you're not alone. Almost every man has been there, hovering over the phone, wondering whether to send one more message, one more clarification, one more reassurance. The problem is each extra word subtly signals uncertainty, and uncertainty doesn't invite closeness, it invites distance. Silence creates space. Space allows emotions to settle. Space gives her room to feel instead of react. When you keep explaining, you remove that space. You turn the interaction into something heavy, something that requires management instead of curiosity. Here's what most men don't realize. You don't need to defend your character when your behavior is consistent. Calm consistency speaks louder than paragraphs ever could. When you stop explaining yourself, you show that you're comfortable standing on your actions alone. This isn't about ignoring someone out of ego. It's about not chasing emotional reassurance through words. There's a difference. One is reactive, the other is self-respect. Silence also forces honesty to surface. When you stop filling the gaps, reality shows itself. Either interest returns naturally or it doesn't. And while that can feel uncomfortable, it's far healthier than keeping something alive through constant explanation. Most importantly, silence protects your dignity. It keeps you from saying things you'll later wish you hadn't. It keeps you aligned with your values instead of your nerves. It allows you to remain steady even when things feel uncertain. So if she goes quiet, resist the urge to explain. Let the moment breathe. Let your presence be felt through calm, not commentary. Because when you stop explaining yourself, you don't lose power, you reclaim it. 4. Why trying to fix the problem makes you look weak. Let me say this calmly, because it needs to be heard without defensiveness. A lot of men believe they are being mature when they rush to fix things the moment a woman pulls away. They want to talk it out, clear the air, resolve the tension immediately. On the surface, that sounds responsible. In reality, it often signals impatience and emotional insecurity. Here's the criticism most men don't want to hear. You're not trying to fix the connection. You're trying to soothe your own discomfort. When something feels off, many men treat it like a broken appliance. Identify the issue. Address it directly. Solve it. Move on. But human attraction doesn't work like a technical problem. Emotions aren't logical systems that respond well to pressure and urgency. The moment you push for a conversation she hasn't asked for, you communicate one thing very clearly. I can't sit with uncertainty. And that lack of emotional tolerance is what weakens your position. This is where men need a wake-up call. Strength is not shown by confronting every emotional shift. Strength is shown by knowing when to pause. When you immediately try to fix things, you take away her space to process her own feelings. You turn the dynamic into something heavy, serious, and draining, especially if she wasn't ready to talk yet. Here's the part men need to own. Not every emotional distance is an invitation for discussion. Sometimes it's just a phase. Sometimes it's a test of emotional patience. Sometimes it's clarity forming quietly. When you force dialogue too early, you don't create resolution. You create pressure. Pressure doesn't build attraction. It erodes it. A calm, grounded man doesn't rush to fix what hasn't been clearly broken. He observes. He listens when invited. He doesn't interrogate silence or demand reassurance. That restraint signals confidence far more than any serious conversation ever could. Now, this doesn't mean you avoid communication forever. That's not the message. The advice here is simple but uncomfortable. Let her come to the conversation when she's ready. If she wants clarity, she'll reach out. If she wants space, she'll take it. Your job is not to manage her emotions, it's to manage your response. Here's the wake-up call. Chasing emotional resolution is not leadership. Emotional stability is. When you stop trying to control the outcome, you start showing real strength. Men who constantly try to fix things train themselves to panic at the first sign of uncertainty. Men who stay calm train themselves to trust their presence. One looks anxious, the other looks secure. So slow down. Stop treating distance like an emergency. Let things unfold naturally. The ability to stay composed when things feel unresolved is not weakness. It's emotional maturity. And that maturity is what keeps your respect intact, no matter how the situation ends. 5. How doing nothing can make her reconsider you. Let's talk about the move that feels the hardest for most men, the one that sounds almost irresponsible at first. Doing nothing. No follow-up messages, no emotional speeches, no attempts to regain momentum, just stillness. This idea makes men uncomfortable because it feels passive. It feels like giving up control. But here's the reality. Doing nothing is often the most controlled response you have. When a woman distances herself, the instinct is to do something so you feel useful. Action feels safer than patience. Silence feels like risk. But calm inaction is not absence. It's presence without pressure, and that changes how you're perceived. Doing nothing sends a quiet message. I'm not shaken. Most men underestimate how much emotional steadiness stands out. In a world where people react instantly, the man who doesn't rush becomes noticeable. Not because he's dramatic, but because he's rare. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't punish silence. He simply continues living his life with the same energy. And that consistency is powerful. When you step back and stop reacting, you create space for reflection. You allow her to feel the shift instead of being smothered by it. You let the dynamic rebalance naturally. This isn't manipulation. It's allowing reality to show itself without interference. Here's something men don't like to admit. Constant availability reduces perceived value. When you're always there, always responding, always adjusting, there's no contrast, no room for curiosity, no opportunity for someone to wonder where you are or what you're doing. Doing nothing reintroduces that contrast. This doesn't mean you disappear in bitterness. You don't withdraw emotionally or act cold. You simply stop over-investing where energy isn't being matched. That's not ego, that's self-respect. There's also a deeper benefit here, one that has nothing to do with her. Doing nothing forces you to sit with your emotions instead of outsourcing them. You learn that you can handle uncertainty, that your sense of self isn't dependent on someone else's attention. That realization alone changes how you show up in all relationships. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be chosen, you become more choice-worthy. If she reconsiders, it's because she felt the absence of pressure, not the fear of losing you. If she doesn't, you've still won something far more important. You've kept your composure and your dignity intact. Doing nothing doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're letting attraction either return on its own or reveal that it's gone. Both outcomes bring clarity. Both outcomes protect your self-respect. So the next time distance shows up, resist the urge to react. Stay calm. Stay grounded. Let your steadiness speak. Because sometimes the strongest move a man can make is simply standing still. I'll end this with a statement that most men won't like, but the men who understand it will never see relationships the same way again. The moment you start trying to hold on to a woman, you've already lost the position you were standing in. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you stopped trusting yourself. And when a man stops trusting himself, he hands his emotional stability to someone else. That's where everything collapses. Not because she's wrong, but because you abandoned your center. Distance doesn't destroy attraction. Your reaction to distance does. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this. You are not here to convince someone to choose you. You are here to show up grounded, calm, and self-respecting, and let people meet you there. The men who understand this stop chasing clarity and start attracting honesty. This isn't about winning anyone over. It's about waking up to how much power you give away when you act from fear instead of composure. The strongest men aren't louder. They're steadier. They don't demand reassurance. They don't rush outcomes. They let reality speak for itself. Now, I want to hear from you. If you've experienced distance silence, or confusion in a situation like this, drop a comment and share what happened. I read these and I reach out when I can because this isn't just content, it's a conversation. You're not alone in this, even if it felt that way at the time. Every man watching this has faced moments where his instincts worked against him. That's normal. What matters is learning how to respond differently next time. Stay grounded, stay composed, and remember, your calm is your leverage. If this message hit, engage below. Let's keep the discussion real.